Not all hauntings come with cold spots and ominous indoor breezes that ask you to get out. Sometimes they come with a free to a good home sign and an innocent whim. The story you're about to hear, Uncle Neighbor, begins with something so silly, on a note of such whimsy, it almost feels safe. Keepsakes abandoned, and a friendly neighbor who says, "Oh, those were my uncles." But as we peel back the layers, we'll find that the horror becomes stronger, sharper, and far too personal. It isn't just a ghost story. It's a story about presence. The kind that tricks you into giving it permission. Permission to stay. Tonight, you're meeting Uncle Neighbor, and you're never going to forget him. I'm Cora Poe, and this is SlumberMyth, a place for insomnia fuel.
Hey guys, just moved into this weird AF building and found this messed up journal in the back corner of a closet. Literally the only thing left here by the previous tenants. Not usually into books, but this shit is crazy as hell. I'm so freaked by this, not gonna lie. I'm in a heated argument with management trying to figure out what happened to the people who lived here before me. Like, if something fucked up happened, they have to tell me, don't they? Till I find out. I typed up the whole thing to post here, so tell me what you think. I am legit so freaked the hell out by this.
The lobby. If you've never been haunted by a skeleton before, you probably think it's the bones that are the problem. It's not. It's what's still hanging around them. The first time I saw Uncle Neighbor, he wasn't a whole skeleton, just 2 arms. The bones were bleached white, gummy with the decayed lacquer coating that once preserved them, every finger wired neatly to a thin steel rod. Being just arms, they made me feel lonely for them. They were posed unceremoniously on the coffee table in the center of my apartment building's lobby, of which I already have major problems with aesthetically. Gorgeous French Rococo crown molding, a massive tie-dye painting on the wall, glass 1970s-style flower power sconces. The interior designer of this fugly room made it look like it was decorated by a child with no understanding of the nuances of eclecticism. But due to the absurd combination of Rococo, mid-century, and postmodern pieces, the skeletal arms almost felt decorative, like they belonged there. But I knew better. For one thing, this postmodern coffee table, surrounded by black leather, uncomfortably low-seated chairs, was the unspoken sharing table of the building. Whenever someone had items that were too good to throw out but not enough to keep, they were put onto this table. At least until someone claimed them, or Jerry the maintenance man threw them out with a begrudging huff. Aside from the fact they were on this sharing table, I also knew they were no addition to the abhorrent decor due to the sign attached to them. It was almost too small to notice. A crooked, tiny corner of torn cardboard leaned against them, the words scrawled in thick, cursive black Sharpie, "Free to a good home." It was so absurd that I laughed. It looked like something out of a horror movie's opening scene. The moment before the idiot protagonist touches the cursed object, and the audience groans, "Don't take it home." But me, having my spooky bitch credentials, thought myself above such narratives, and gleefully gathered the skeletal arms up into my own befleshed ones. Grinning like a demon, I punched the elevator button repeatedly and waited to take my new treasures up to the 7th floor where I lived. Looking back now, I realized there was an immediate sign to leave them behind, but I ignored my gut like a fool. You see, my apartment building is odd. Strange design choices go far beyond the horrible aesthetics of the lobby. The very bones of this place are bizarre. According to Jerry, In the 1980s, it was a popular boutique hotel before it was repurposed as overpriced housing. Each and every apartment in this building has a different layout. Some of them have little foyers through their front doors that lead directly into a half flight of stairs up into the rest of the home. Others have the same, but with half flights down into the unit's living room. Some, like my apartment, have no foyer at all. It is apparently for this reason that our building only has odd-numbered floors. Basement, lobby, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. There are only odd-numbered buttons in the elevator. But as I waited for the lift to pick me up from the badly decorated lobby with my new, beloved, albeit odd, treasures, I saw it. As the elevator made its way down from the 9th floor, I excitedly watched the digital numbers descend. And between 7 and 5, it happened, if only for a moment, a millisecond. I thought maybe I was just seeing things, but looking back, I'm positive I saw it flicker a digital 6 a few times. 3 times, actually. Just a quick flutter. Of course, I immediately wrote it off as my overactive imagination, or at the very most, a simple glitch in the old elevator's system. When the elevator doors opened, the woman who lived 2 doors down from me, I don't know her name and always forget to ask, my neighbor, was standing inside. Her eyes immediately fell to the items in my clutches, and they widened. I began to speak defensively, as she seemed like a much more normal woman than myself, but she quickly fanned away my anxiety with a perfectly manicured hand as she explained, rather matter-of-factly, that they'd belonged to her uncle. At first, I was intrigued and smiled. Oh, was he a professor or something? Stupid. She shook her head slowly, lowering her gaze to look up into my eyes through her thick eyelashes. No, not his like he bought them. His like they are, or were, his. It took every shred of self-control I had to keep myself from allowing my mouth to spread into the maniacal grin I felt fluttering in my chest. Fucking jackpot, I thought. She went on to explain further. He'd donated his body to science decades ago, back before schools switched to fake plastic skeletons. Real human ones, like him, were a normal sight in anatomy classes. Her uncle had spent decades in a high school biology lab, crucified to a rolling stand in the corner, chalk dust collecting in his joints while bored teenagers spun him around to make him wave a few times a year. She said he'd been retired when the school decided it was time to modernize, which meant shipping him back to his family. But apparently, whoever shipped him thought it wasn't barbaric to ship him in pieces. Yes, pieces. When I asked if she was serious, she told me they'd sent all of them in several small boxes over several months, but it was only his arms that made it back to her family. When I asked why she was getting rid of them, her gaze darkened, and it was clear she was choosing her words carefully. She herself is a scientist and is not one for ghost stories, but she did not have a good relationship with her uncle when he was alive, and she explained that the thought of him living with her made her feel uncomfortable. So she decided the arms had to go. Fair enough. She brought them downstairs, wrote the cardboard sign, and left them in the lobby for anyone to take. Anyone like me. I don't know what I was thinking. My morbid curiosity got the better of me the second I recognized them as real bones. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all, but I picked them up. They weren't heavy, just awkward, the metal rods and sharp curling springs cold against my hands. And yet, I swear, there was a strange warmth lingering in the bones themselves, like they'd been sitting in the sun before being momentarily stuck in a freezer. It was the oddest thing. My husband didn't even get the chance to argue, By the time he saw them, they were already on 2 shelves in our living room. I positioned the arms spread around the knickknacks, picture frames, and books each shared its new home with. I told myself it was fine. They were just bones, just history, just some guy. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was talking to him. The first knock. For the first week, nothing happened. As I'd come to enjoy their presence, proud of my strange loot, it took an unfortunate amount of time for it to dawn on me that perhaps it wasn't a great idea to have the remains of a stranger in my home. So, just to be what I considered at the time to be safe, I started talking to them. When I felt an instinctual twinge of dread to look over my shoulder while watching TV, whilst the arms were tucked onto the shelves above and behind me, outstretched like a hug obstructed by books and family photos, I said aloud, like an idiot, "I hope you'll be happy here. I want you to know that you have a home with me wherever I go, and that I will always appreciate your company and the sacrifice you made for the sake of others' education. Very noble, good sir." I paused. I wish I knew your name, but I don't even know your niece's name, to be fair. I tapped my chin. My neighbor's uncle. Perfect. I dub thee Uncle Neighbor. I grinned to myself wildly, thinking myself so cute and clever. The arms just sat there, on their shelves in our living room, positioned so they leaned slightly back on their elbows, palms draped forward idly. They'd been wired with steel rods, which kept them in a kind of eternal waiting pose. Fingers curled ever so slightly, like they were ready to drum on the IKEA shelving at the first sign of boredom. We didn't hide them when guests came over. Why would we? They were great conversation starters. People always noticed them the moment they walked in. Some laughed nervously, others stared too long, like they were trying to decide whether they were supposed to be amused or regretful about their choice of friends. One friend wrinkled his nose and said,
"You are so going to regret that."
I just laughed. Don't worry, dude. Uncle Neighbor and I have an understanding. I protect his spirit with my hospitality, and he protects our home with his ghostly powers. I'm not going to regret it, you baby. And I didn't. Well, not yet. It was kitschy, in a macabre way, you know? They fit seamlessly with the rest of our decor. Unlike the lobby, I have an eye for interior design. But again, I have spooky bitch credentials, so the arms matched the rest of our apartment, befitted with old leather-bound books, a dark, earthy palette, animal bones, and disturbing paintings. They fit in perfectly here. A little grotesque, sure, but the story made it charming. My neighbor had inherited them from her uncle, Uncle Neighbor, as I started calling him, who donated his skeleton to science, then somehow ended up only partially returned. The arms were all that made it home, and now they had found a home with me. Fun, right? No harm done, right? That's all they were at first. Just bones with a sweet, odd story. Then came the first knock. It was late, after 1 a.m., and I was half asleep on the couch, husband already in bed in the other room. That is when I heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. A pause. Then there were 3 more. Not a friendly tap, tap, tap. Not a shave and a haircut. But a rhythm with weight to it. A rhythm someone meant you to notice. My eyes widened, instantly terrified and a little confused. I am a millennial, after all, and am not accustomed to people coming to the front door without alerting me digitally first. I checked my phone. No delivery notifications, nor texts from friends who randomly decided to drop by. In my jammies, I got out from under the throw blanket and silently padded over to the door. I slowly, pressed my eye to the peephole. Face flushed, heart pounding. Before we find out what's waiting in the hall, let's step for just a moment into a different kind of story. One where the horror is real, but the ending can be rewritten. Today's original Creepypasta is brought to you by the Coagulation Foundation, a nonprofit that offers marginalized writers, artists, and musicians a supportive community of love and professional creativity. Coagulation Foundation helps them by raising visibility for their work and give them the chance to expand their resumes through collaborative networking. We're building a more inclusive and equitable future in music, art, and literature media, one participant at a time. Coagulation Foundation raises funds in two ways: through the sales of our biannual anthology book, the next of which will become available October 1st, 2025, Coagulation 10, The Veil, and from generous, sustained contributions from helpful people like you. Whether that's via our Patreon or one-time lump sum gifts to our Cash App, if you ever wanted to aid the hindered talents of the world by bringing their work into the light, this is your moment to help make that happen. Now, let's get back to the story and find out what awaits us in the hallway. The hallway was empty, save the ugly sconce on the wall beside the exterior of our front door, whose harsh light had been flickering eerily for weeks. Weird, but not terrifying. The acoustics in these hallways could be strange. Maybe it came from somewhere else on the floor. The next night, it happened again. Same pattern, same pause, same nothing when I looked. I had convinced myself it was a trick of the echoing hallways and must just be someone else on the floor that is being bothered consistently late. By the third night, I was telling myself there had to be some neighbor with rude friends. Annoying, a little obnoxious, but not dangerous. But by the fourth, I was on edge. The knock came, and this time I didn't wait. I yanked open the door mid-rhythm. The hallway was empty. The light beside our door buzzed and flickered. Silence. But when I turned back inside to face the couch and the shelves, illuminated by nothing but the television, the arms, they weren't on the shelves anymore. My eyes pricked with tears of confusion and fear, maybe even a little anger, assuming almost immediately that my husband must have been messing with me all this time, a punishment for my willful insomnia. As I began marching back toward the bedroom to shake him awake and give him an earful, I saw them. They were sitting upright against the right of the front of the door's frame, the front door, flat on the floorboards, elbows slightly bent, like they'd been waiting in the exact place the knocks had been coming from, where I wouldn't have been able to see them once the door was opened. I laughed. Because what else do you do when you catch your own imagination running away with you? I looked to the bedroom down the hall where my husband slept. "Ha ha, very funny. Got me, you turd," I whispered to myself, a wry smile on my face out of respect for my husband's brilliant prank. The next morning, as we walked to the gym together, I explained that the jig was up and that I had discovered modum operandi for this little ongoing ghostly knock-knock joke. But his expression wasn't amused. He stopped mid-stride, looking at me seriously, brows pierced.
"I didn't touch them,"
he said, tone clipped, serious as a heart attack. We argued briefly, first me becoming irritated that he was taking it further, then about whether they'd been moved when we last dusted the shelves. Upon returning from our workout, we decided to just put them back and move on. But the next morning, I noticed something new. The scratches. Not random scuffs from cleaning, but lightened lines of scuffs, grooves carved into the layered cheap white paint on the front door, right at the height where the fingertips had been placed upon my discovery of the eerily located arms. Long, parallel lines, dragged down with enough force to coil the scraped-off paint into ribbon-like curls. At night, another new development. A worse development. That night, the footsteps began. Slow, steady, measured, pacing the 7th floor hallway, stopping right outside our front door. We tried to open the door mid-step, but every time there was nothing but the dim-lit stretch of empty hall and that ugly flickering light. Both of us, without admitting it aloud, began to believe the same impossible thing. Uncle Neighbor wasn't just sitting there. He was active. I should have been afraid. Any reasonable person would have been, or at least a little perplexed. But I wasn't. I told myself maybe he was keeping watch. Maybe if I acknowledged him, respected him, appreciated him, it would keep him from getting restless. So, I started speaking to him in the quiet moments, beyond the lone previous conversation where I named him Uncle Neighbor. Little things like, "Thanks for keeping an eye on us," and "We appreciate you." And when I was really feeling creeped out, seemingly out of nowhere, "I'm sure this old weird building is infested with angry ghosts. Thanks for protecting us from them, Uncle Neighbor." For a long time, months really, the knocking stopped. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, we'd struck some kind of balance, an agreement, or a symbiotic relationship of sorts. Through the walls. After the dreams started, I assumed things might get worse in ways to be expected. More scratches on the door, more footsteps in the hall, more late-night knocking. Instead, it went quiet. Too quiet. I kept waiting for the sound of the knocks, for the pacing footsteps outside, for the sight of the arms somewhere they shouldn't be. But days passed with nothing. The arms stayed exactly where we put them. Still and almost polite. Like new roommates who had finally taken the hint. I think that was when my husband decided the whole thing was over. He didn't say it outright, but the comfortability and smug way he moved around the apartment said plenty. The arms were just a creepy knick-knack again, just a fun icebreaker. The weird noises were probably old pipes. Lord knows our building has plenty of them. Then came the tapping. At first, it was so faint I thought it might be in my head. 3 sharp clicks. Pause. 3 more. Almost polite. But it wasn't coming from the door. It was inside the wall. The first night it happened, I sat up and turned toward the sound. My husband was still scrolling on his phone, not even looking up. "You hear that?" I asked. He paused.
Nope,
he said without conviction. The tapping happened again. Louder this time. Moving from one end of the room to the other, following the line of the wall like something was crawling inside it. He kept his eyes on his phone. Over the next few nights, the tapping got bolder. Sometimes it came from the bedroom wall while we were brushing our teeth. Other times it started in the kitchen and made its way toward the living room. Then it would wrap all the way around, passing right behind us where we sat on the couch. We'd both freeze when it started, pretending to be deep in conversation or concentrating on the TV. The rhythm changed, too. At first, it was the same deliberate pattern as the knocks on the door, but then it became impatient, sharper, like it was trying to get our attention faster. once. I pressed my ear to the wall. For a second, there was nothing. And then, a slow, deep inhale. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. My husband laughed when I told him, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that meant he thought it was funny. It was the kind people do when they're trying to bury their own unease. The arms didn't move during any of this. They stayed perfectly still on their shelf, watching, waiting. What was worse somehow, it was like they weren't involved at all. Like whatever was in the walls was something else. One night, the tapping came from inside the headboard. Not the wall behind it, but inside the wood. It was almost 3 a.m. I woke to the sound of my husband's breathing, deep and even beside me. At first, I thought it was just a dream remnant, until the bed frame shivered slightly. The tapping was so close, I could feel it through the pillow. I held my breath. My heart was going so fast, I thought the thing inside the wood could probably hear it. The tapping stopped. Then, the mattress dipped. Not on my side. His. His breathing hitched, sharp and sudden, and I knew without looking that he was awake. We didn't move for what felt like a full minute. And then, at the exact same time, we both turned our heads toward the bedroom door. It was open. The faint blue light from the living room spilled across the floor just enough to show the shape of something. Well, 2 somethings. For the horrifying conclusion of this tale, I will see you next week.